right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Python Beginner Bootcamp Day 4. How are you doing today, Algo fam? Who is ready for session 4? This is our last session, and I know I'm also sad. I have a lot of fun this week, and I have learned a lot. But after today's session, the challenge is to understand all the concepts that Joe explained to us during this bootcamp. Because maybe you don't realize this, but we use inner transaction in the contract to create assets. We learn how to do opt-in, how to transfer assets, how to create assets. And we use clients to connect with local net, and the same way we can do it to connect to testnet or even mainnet. And at the end, we use many features that Algorand offers to us as a network. And those features are important for us and add a lot of value when we are planning to create a project. So if you have any question, any error, we invite you to help each other on Discord, because sometimes we don't have enough bandwidth to answer all the questions. But for example, you have been playing around with Python and you already understand some things, so you can help the rest of the algorithms on Discord. And before we get started with the content that Joe has prepared for us, I have some last announcements. The first one, as you know, at the end of today's session, I will share with you the link so you can claim the certificate of completion. And I will explain the process to claim them. And the best part of this new certificate is that they are verifiable credentials that you can add to your LinkedIn profile. I also will explain to you how to do it. Hold on a second. I just want to share my screen. As you know, this is the end for the beginner Python bootcamp, but we'll have the intermediate one. Over there, we are going to add more features to our marketplace smart contract, and you will learn more things. And maybe over there, we are going to explain to people how they can implement the project on mainnet or testnet. I'm right, Joe?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we have 4 weeks to practice, ask questions on Discord, and get ready to keep learning and adding features to the basic smart contract that we create during these sessions. And for example, if you want, the next week, we will have the TypeScript Beginner Bootcamp. We're going to create the same project, but this time we're going to use TypeScript to code the smart contract. If you have a friend who likes TypeScript, you can invite him or her to join us. And at the end of today's session, you will claim your certificate, so you can share this certificate on your socials and you can tag us, so many more people can join the upcoming bootcamps. And the other important thing that I want to share with you, yesterday we announced our global hackathon. And the idea is that you can participate. There are going to be 3 tracks, the DeFi, the consumer, and the interoperability one. The important dates, yesterday we opened the registrations. The hacking windows will be from May 15 to June 12. And the finalist announcement is going to be in June 19th. The Grandmaster Demo Day is going to be in June 27th. And the winners from each track will compete on the main stage of the cipher, and they can earn $10,000 additional. The Grandmaster winner is chosen by on-chain community vote. So I will share with you guys the link over here so you can register in this hackathon. I consider that this is the best opportunity for you to put in practice all the things that you have been learning with us during these bootcamp sessions. And it's also a good opportunity to bring to the life those ideas that you have. Sometimes you say, okay, I want to create this product, but what is the best strategy? Participate in a hackathon, receive feedback, and start building your product. So I expect that a lot of people that participate in this bootcamp can register in the hackathon, and maybe we'll have some winners that start their journey with us in the intro bootcamp, in the Python ones, and then they can win during the hackathon. So we are ready for the last session, and we are super motivated to participate in the hackathon. Joe, any additional comment, or you are ready to the last session for our beginner bootcamp?
No, I think we're ready to get started on this front end and finally see it all come together.
Wonderful. So over to you, and if you have any question, feel free to use the question tab on Limestore, and in that way we can answer during the session.
Okay, so before we actually jump back into the content, what I'm going to do is just go over some housekeeping stuff to make sure we're all on the same page. So the first thing I want to let you guys know is that the content that we went over yesterday is now on GitHub. So let me share my screen. So if you come over to GitHub and you go to Algorand Bootcamp and go to the Python, the Digital Marketplace Beginner repo. In here, if you go to projects, you will now see front end. And if you come down to, oh no, it's in source, and then our methods TS file that we wrote yesterday. And so this is going to have all the code that we wrote yesterday if you want to get it caught up. And the other important thing from yesterday is that yesterday we didn't have the release of AlgoKit utils, but we do have that today. So let me pull up my VS Code and show you how to update that. So make this bigger. So yesterday, when we started writing this code, you might have noticed that this Algorand client class is going to have a squiggly line that say it's undefined because the previous version of AlgoKit utils doesn't have the Algorand client. So in order to update our version, what we want to do is go to our terminal and make sure we're in projects/frontend. And we're going to run, that's not what I wanted to paste. We're going to run this command, npm I Algorand Foundation utils at 6.00 beta 4. Let me go ahead and post that in the Livestorm chat. That's the wrong tab. Where? Here we are. Go ahead and post that. So doing this, again, make sure you are in your project's front end directory. Then you should see one package was changed, and you'll know that it worked if you come back to your methods.ts and the Algorand client no longer has a squiggly line underneath it. And so right now, as you'll note, the release is currently 6.0 beta. However, we're probably going to be doing a SIG release later this week. So if you were to do a new AlgoKit init right now, you would still have the old version. You would have to manually update to the beta version. But later when we do the full stable release, this will be on every AlgoKit init now. But it's available on NPM. You just got to make sure you specify the version. So npmi, Algorand Foundation, AlgoKit utils, and then at version 6.00 beta 4. And again, I've pasted that in the chat. Okay, so once we are all on the same page, we should be able to continue on. First, let me address some questions. So this is a general question. What is the right Discord channel to pose questions? If it's questions specific to the bootcamp content, you can post in bootcamps. However, if it's you think it's a general question that something in AlgoKit isn't working or something in Python isn't working, then you can ask in the respective channels. Those channels are monitored a little bit more closely by other engineers that are working on these tools, so they might be able to answer a little bit quicker there. And then if you really don't know where to go, you can, of course, post in general dev as well. At the end of the day, wherever you post, someone will come and help you. It just might take a little bit longer depending on which channel you post it in, because some people only monitor specific channels because that's their area of expertise. But if you post something and you don't get an answer, feel free to tag myself. I'm JLP on the Discord, and I will help you or get someone that is better suited to help you to take a look at the problem you're having. So the whole end-to-end flow, you got it right. We're going to be creating the app, opting into the contract, and then we transfer some assets into the contract, and then people can then buy the assets. And let me pull up the test here so we can take a look. So if we take a look at the test that we wrote in session 2 here. So first we call opt into asset so we can send the contract some of the assets. And then for step 3, when we do the asset transfer, that's done here in this TEF deposit. We're doing an asset transfer from our creator to the digital marketplace app address. And we'll visualize that flow and see how it's implemented in our front end today. And quick question on the hackathon, there will be a team formation session. I don't have the information off the top of my head, but you can go to our socials, so on Twitter or on Discord, to get more detailed information. And later on, when we do the stable release of the Aggregate Utils package, you would just have to do an npm update Grand Foundation Aggregate Utils, and it will give you the latest version, or you specify the version you want. Right now, we have to specify the beta version because npm won't automatically pull beta versions, but in the future, it'll do it automatically. Okay, if you're still running into some squiggly lines, it looks like with MBR transaction, if you're seeing discrepancies in the variable names, what I would do is check your contract to make sure that your variable names, that your argument names are the same. So, for example, if we take a look at our contract, you'll see it. Now, I'm not exactly sure where you're seeing this error. We might need to go on Discord to figure out a little bit more details. But this, for example, taking a look at the opt-into asset, we have this argument called MBR pay, and that's the name of the argument. And so if we go to our projects and we go to our front end and we take a look at our oh, that would be why, because I have an error in my contract. Okay, so looks like we was, although I tested this morning and it seemed to work, so that's weird. But what should happen here, let me share my actual VS screen. Okay, so in our projects source front end, or projects front end source methods.ts, when we do, we import digital marketplace from contracts digital marketplace. And when we do an AlgoKit project, or actually, no, excuse me, we can just do an npm run dev. Oh, that's why we need to do an AlgoKit project link --all. And that will go ahead and generate the contract client for me. And we can now see this MBR transaction error. So the easiest way to fix that is, and the reason that is happening is because when we generate our client, it automatically uses the argument name that we used in our method. So what we need to do is we just need to make a correction. We can actually just make a correction to here we can just say MBR pay is MBR transaction, and that should work now. So I will be sure to, when I post the recordings later, I'll be sure to make an edit to make sure that's clear. But in general, if you see squiggly lines on your argument names, you just want to make sure they line up with your actual contracts, because when we run AlgoKit project link all, when we run that command, that will catch up the client to the latest version, and then that will pick up any of the names here. Now, the alternative that we could also do is we could also change this to MBR transaction, but it's a little bit easier to just change the name in our front end. So that's what we went ahead and did. So, but once we run that, if we run an npm run dev, it should be able to work without complaining. So we know that we have our, right. And we shouldn't see any more squiggly lines after that. Okay, so great catch. I forgot to update my client for the Python. So that was indeed a good catch. And now we should all be ready to continue on. And let me just make sure there's no questions. Yep. Okay, great. I'm going to share the video. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick up right where we left off after forming our methods.ts file. So we'll probably overlap a little bit with where we ended yesterday, but just to make sure that we can all get caught on the same page. So I'm going to go ahead and play it from here. And do note that there's about an hour left in this video. So this session might go a little bit longer than the other sessions, assuming we have some questions to stop for in the middle. But I'm not sure if you can see it on your end, but there's about an hour left in this video. And of course, any questions throughout, I will pause to answer.
App ID to 0, right? So again, much like in create, we want our front end to know when we've created the app, what the app ID is, and when we delete, we want our front end to know that we've deleted, and we can set the app ID to 0. Okay, so at this point, this is basically all the code that we're going to be writing for actually interacting with the app. Everything from this point on is going to be implementing it in React in the AlgoKit template. So if you aren't using the AlgoKit template or you aren't using React, you can kind of stop here. However, if you want to see how I actually take this into React, then we can continue on here. So again, what I've done is I've created that generic type TS file in my source directory. But now what I want to do is I want to create a component that can take in those methods and actually execute them. So I'm going to create a new component here, and I'm going to call it method call.tsx. I'm going to create this, I should show you kind of how I go about creating this. What we can do is we can kind of just copy and paste this wallet connect. And however, I'm just going to get rid of all the code that we're actually returning here. And we don't need any of this code. And I'm going to change this to method call. Change this to method call interface. And in my method call interface, I want to pass in a method function. And this is going to be an anonymous function that is going to be an async with a void return. And then, actually, yeah, let's just keep it like that for now. So then in my method call, I have method function, and this is going to be, oops. And what we're going to return is we're going to return a button. So I'm going to create a button here. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the loading text, or excuse me, put the text to be some text we pass in. So in our interface here, we're going to say text is going to be a string. Add our text here. And so in here, we're going to return, method call. So in here, we're going to have a button that has our text. Now to align this with the rest of our style, we're going to give it a class name using our Tailwind components. So a button with a margin of 2. And so we have a button where we specify the text, but what we want to do is we want to specify what happens when we actually click that button. And that is where this click call method function is going to come in. Oh, just method function. Okay. And so this is why, so if we come to our methods TS, this is why we have our functions return an async function. Our onClick is going to be executing the method function, and the method function we're going to be executing is this function that we return. Okay. Now, of course, what we haven't done yet is actually call that function. So I'm going to say const call method function. This is going to be a sync function. And I'm going to say await method function. This will be call method function. And the reason why we're doing this is so we can set our loading spinner. So I'm going to come up here. I am going to create some state called loading. And this is going to be boolean that is false. We need to.
I'm actually going to pause right here because I realized what might be beneficial is if I show you what the end product is going to look like before we continue coding on. So I'm going to briefly pause the video, and what I'll do is I'll show you what the end product is going to look like. And this will give you a little bit more context as to why we're doing things the way we're doing it. So let me just go ahead and start up my local net. Okay, so this is going to be the final product where someone can come in and connect their wallet. Because we're on local net, I want to make sure. Okay, I was just making sure I was sharing the right screen. Because we're on local net, the only option here is local net wallet. If we were on testnet or mainnet, this would automatically update to show other end user wallets like Para or DFly. But I can go ahead and connect my local wallet, and that's going to connect to KMD. You can just hit OK. And then what I basically want to happen is I want to be able to define a price for my contract and create it. And in the video, I said a loading spinner. This is what I'm talking about. I want it to show that it's loading as I'm creating it. And then once I have this created, and by default, and we'll talk about this in the video, by default, we just make 10 random assets for sale just to keep things a little bit easier. But then once it's created, as an end user, I can come in and say, I want to buy 3, and that'll tell me I can get 3 units for 6 algo. I can go ahead and pay, and I can see I have 7 left, and I can go ahead and buy the full 7. And as the creator, I can delete the app, or as a end user that is not the creator, I will see that it's sold out. So that is the end product that we're going to be getting to eventually. I just wanted to quickly show you that just so there's a little bit more context into what we're building towards before we continue on. And I know this is not the best front end ever, but it is simple enough where we can kind of cover it in the bootcamp and really just focus on the core Algorand concepts. So I'll go ahead and continue the coding. I just wanted to make sure that everyone had that context to understand kind of what we're building for, and particularly what I'm talking about when I'm mentioning things like our loading bar.
Come on. Need to import use state from React. Okay, so we're going to have a piece of state that tells the user whether the function's loading or not. And we're going to set loading to true before we call it, and then set loading to false after, right? So we are going to pass in our method function, which is going to be this async function. We're going to start loading, call the function, and once the function has finished, as returned has been confirmed on chain, we're going to set loading to false. And now we're going to use that loading value, and we're going to say, if we're loading, then we are going to return a span where the class name is equal to loading dash spinner. And if we're not loading, then we're going to return the text that we pass in. And if you're not familiar with React, this might be a little bit confusing, but we'll see how it all comes together in just a second when we implement our first button here. But in this React component, what we basically said is we're going to define a new React component that is simply a button. And when we click this button, we're going to call our method function that we get from our methods. And we are going to display to the user that we're loading while that function is being executed. So now at this point, we can go ahead and we can start modifying our home.tsx in order to actually, make use of these callback functions that we have, and of course, make use of this component. So we're going to come over to our home.tsx, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the state that we're going to need, or at least some of the state that we're going to need for our app. So I'm going to come on over to, actually the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the stuff we don't need. We don't need this demo modal, so we can get rid of that. And we can get rid of this. Actually, I'll just get rid of the whole thing. And we can get rid of our open demo modal. And so now if we were to go back, I think we're still running it. No, we're not. So if we do a npm run dev, and we come back here, we can see that we now just have our getting started in our wallet connect button. What I'm going to do is I'm also going to get rid of that getting started. So get rid of this here. And I'm just going to put this divider below wallet connect. So now if we go back, we see we have welcome to AlgoKit, blah, blah, blah. Then we have our wallet connect button that still works as it did before. And then we have our divider. And so below this divider, actually, before we get into modifying the front end anymore, let's talk a little bit about the state that we're going to use. We know, as we previously discussed, we want to persist the app ID in our state. So I'm going to have a new piece of state called app ID. And this is going to be a number. The default value is going to be 0. So in a React app, we're going to be saving our app ID. And what this is basically going to allow us to do is anytime we want our app ID to change, when we call set app ID, React will know to re-render our front end and update it. So once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to also instantiate our DM client. So const DM client goes new digital marketplace client. And we're going to resolve by ID. Again, much like our test, we resolve by ID so we can tell which app ID we want to point to. In our case, we're going to point to our app ID. And then the sender, this is where things start to get a little bit different from our testing. Our sender, our address is going to be active address. And then we're going to use the signer. So what does this mean? Use Wallet is a wallet agnostic framework for integrating many different wallet providers in your app. So right now, our only wallet provider is going to be our local net, as we've seen. But by integrating Use Wallet now, in the future, when we switch to testnet, then we automatically, or testnet or mainnet, we automatically support other wallets like Para or DFly. And so we're going to use Wallet to get the address that the user connected and get the function that we need to sign the transactions for that user. And then we're going to pass in our, forgot to instantiate. The other thing we need is we need a const Algorand. And this is going to be give me 1 second. Let me just make sure right. So actually what we need to do is we need a const Algorand config, or get Algorand config from, actually we need to import that first. So we're going to import const get algod config from void environment. And then our algod from void environment. That's going to be algod config. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get Algorand from algokit dot, and we need to import algokit. Import star as algokit from Algorand Foundation algokit utils. And we're going to import algokit.algorand client, the Algorand client from config, pass in our algod config. Okay, so again, kind of summarize, we've gotten our algod config from our environment. And if we take a look at what that actually means, here in our front end, we have this .env. So we know we're connecting to localhost. But in the future, if we wanted to test it, change it to testnet or mainnet, all we would have to do is change this env file. And so we get the environment from our env file. We instantiate our Algorand client, and then we use that to get our algod client or our marketplace client. Okay, and we're going to assert that this is not undefined, or assert that it is defined. And one more thing we're going to do, actually two more things we're going to do. So the first is after we've instantiated our Algorand client, we need to set the default signer to our signer from Use Wallet. And then we also need to configure algokit.config.configure, and we're going to say populate app call resource to true. Again, as I mentioned in our testing portion, in the future, this might not be needed, but it is needed for right now. So we're just going to set that to true. There's no harm in enabling it in the future. It will just be enabled by default. So enabling populate app call resource to be true. And then make sure we've set our DM client and we've created our Algorand client, and it knows the default signer function to use is from Use Wallet. And so now at this point, we can go ahead and start to think about how we want to implement our method call buttons. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to create some input that allows the user to define what app they want to connect to. So I'm going to come into my grid here, below my divider. I'm going to create a label. It's going to be app ID. And because this is going to be a tail1 component, we're going to say label, class name is label. And then we're going to create an input the type is going to be number. Class name, that'll be input and input bordered. Our value is going to be our app ID. And what we want to happen is when this value changes, we're going to add our onChange. It's going to be equal to this callback function where we set app ID be e.currentTarget.value as number or 0. Okay, so what we've done is we've created an input that each time we change it, we're going to update the app ID that our app is connecting to. Okay, so now what we want to do is I'm going to create another divider. Oops. Oh, that's the wrong thing to copy. I want to copy this divider div. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start implementing my method call here. So I'm going to say if there's an active address, so the user has connected their address, and the app ID is equal to 0, then I am going to render a div, and this div is going to contain that method call, the method call component that I created. I'm going to say my method function, that is going to be this create function from our methods. So create, and we're going to be passing in our Algorand client, our DM client, our Algorand client. Need to go back to this TS. Actually, we can just look at the IntelliSense. So we need our Algorand client, our DM client, our asset ID. So we don't have that defined yet, but that's okay. Our unitary price, we don't have that defined yet either. Our quantity, which we also don't have defined. Our sender, it's going to be active address. And then passing in the set app ID function. Okay, so now we need to create some state for these three values. So I'm going to come back up here. And these are the values. So we're going to do const asset ID, set asset ID. It's going to be useState big int. By default, it's going to be URN. I'm going to do the same thing for unitary price. So unitary price, set unitary price. It's going to be useState big int 0n. And finally, quantity, set quantity. That's also going to be useState big int default value of 0. And what is this complaining about? Oh, and then our text is going to be createApp. Okay, so if we come back over here and we connect our wallet, we'll now have this createApp button. And so if I go ahead and click createApp, let's see what happened here. Looks like we have a problem with one of the values we're passing in. So big int 0, 0, 0. Passing in our Algorand client, our DM client, so ID, our unitary price, our active address, our set app ID. So let's see here, cannot convert undefined to a big int. It's happening at line 22. Oh, interesting. For some reason, it's our asset create method that is, let's go ahead and where is it? Asset create, await Algorand, send asset create. Let me go back to the console here. Some live debugging. Maybe something happened upstream. Oh, this probably. Let me refresh and do that again. Okay, yeah, can't. For some reason, let's do a console log of our asset create. And this is very weird. I haven't seen this bug before where the asset create transaction isn't actually creating us an asset. Let me make sure I haven't typed anything here incorrectly. I don't think I have. Wait, Algorand send. Asset create. That should be working. Let me come back to my cheat sheet here. That is very bizarre. So let me pause and then we'll come back. Okay, so I realized what the problem was, and how I figured it out is if I, come back here, I was logging the asset create return result. And if I go to my confirmations, go to my confirmation, I'll see that my asset, asset index is undefined. But if I look at the transaction, I see here that there is no asset amount specified. And so that's happening because in my code, I'm passing a quantity of 0. So all I need to do to fix this is I'm just going to hard code my quantity to 10 right now. And I had planned to do that, but I just forgot about that. So I'm going to hard code my quantity to 10. And if we come back over here, this now should work. But it seems like we are missing something here. Oh, and because we forgot to change that. Okay, coming back, we do a reload. Let's refresh. And now we can see, so every time this pops up, that means the transaction is being signed. And now we can see that we've created our app. It just happens to be app ID 1234. But if I go ahead and I run this again, we can see here we create another app 1240. Okay, so after that little bit of debugging, we can be sure that our create button is indeed working. So now what we want to do is we want to be able to allow the user to buy some assets from a marketplace that they go to. So as an end user, I want to be able to come to the site. I go, oh, I know I want to go to marketplace 1234, and it'll show you, the information for that marketplace. So I'm going to come back to my home.tsx. I'm going to come down here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another set of code for when the app ID is not 0. So here I did active address and app ID not 0. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say when I have an active address, so when the user is connected, and app ID is not 0, I'm going to render a div here. And this is going to contain the inputs for when someone wants to buy it. So the first thing I need to do is tell them how much that thing costs, right? So I need to say label class name equals label. It's going to be price per unit. And then I'm going to have an input here. The type is just going to be text because we're going to be using a big int. Class name is going to be input ordered. And we are going to say that the value is going to be equal to our unitary price divided by big int 10 e to the 6th. So, oh, and we need to put this all as dot to string. Okay, so we're going to get our unitary price. And remember, our unitary price is always a microalgo. But for our end users, we want to show that value in algos. So we're going to divide that by 10 to the 6th. And one thing we're also going to do is we're going to update this to say read only. It's true. Actually, I don't think we need the equals true. We can just do read only. So now when we create our app, it'll show us the price per unit. But of course, that value right now is basically just always going to be 0 because we need to create a function for updating our unitary price. And to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to use something called useEffect. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to create a new function or new useEffect call. This is going to be a function. And how useEffect works is basically we give it a list of variables, a list of state variables that we want to monitor. And when those variables change, we want our useEffect function to be called. So I'm going to monitor the app ID. And whenever our app ID changes, I'm going to use our DM client. What is this? Oh, I need to import useEffect. I'm going to use our DM client to get global state. And then I'm going to get my global state. This argument. And then in my global state, what I'm going to do, I'm going to set the unitary price to global state dot unitary price dot as big int or 0 or 0n. So whenever the app ID changes, we're going to ask the app to give us the unitary price. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to get the asset ID of the global state. So global state asset ID as big int or 0. And I'm going to set my asset ID. Oh, I haven't done that yet. Const useState big int 0n. Okay. So whenever my app ID changes, I want to get the unitary price and the asset ID and update my state. However, I'm going to also add in a catch here to set unitary price to 0 and set asset ID to 0. So if we encounter an error when getting our global state, we'll just set everything to 0 because we'll assume that that app isn't actually valid. Okay, so now if we come back down here, where were we? Our price per unit, our value will be unitary price. Asset ID. Oh, I did have set asset ID defined. My mistake. And so now when we create our app, we'll see our unitary price, but it's still 0. And the reason it's still 0 is because we didn't in our create function. So if we come to create, we pass in a unitary price, but that is also still 0. So I'm going to create here, basically gonna, let me copy these 2 lines of code, bring it up to my method call. Need to do that. Except this label is going to be unitary price. And then this is going to be, let me make sure I do this right. Going to my cheat codes here. So this is going to be the same, except I'm going to say on change, we're going to take the change event, do set unitary price to big int e.current value current target dot value or 0. Okay. And so now if we come here, we set our app ID to 0. We can now input a unitary price. It's not letting me change it for some reason. No, we're going to set this type number. There we go. Value as number. Okay. And now we can, oh, we still can't change this. Why can we not change our unitary price here? Let's see. So we have our type as a number, class as an input, our value is the unitary price. Oh, and I actually did forget one thing. I'm going to multiply this by 10e6 so we can get microalgo. It's still not clear to me why. Oh, I can change it now. That was weird. Okay, so now I'm going to save my unitary price to 2. If I create my app, we'll see my price per unit is now correctly showing as 2. Okay, so if I were to go to, let me get rid of this. That was 1258. Let's remember that. Get rid of this. We now have our create, but we go back to 1258. And it knows that the unit price for 1258 is 2. If I go to some other app, it's 0. Come back, it knows it's 2. Okay, so we have successfully created our create component. Now, we still have this quantity hard-coded. We could create another input and another state to change that. But we're just going to leave it hard-coded for now. I don't want to spend too much time on just front-end stuff because I really want to focus on algorithm-specific stuff. But you can imagine how we can create the same exact thing for our quantity. So let's go back. Coming back to our original mission here of adding this buy component to our homepage here. So I'm going to create a new label, and in this label, this is going to be input where the user can specify how much they want to buy. So our desired quantity, and this is going to be an input, much like this. Where send the value is going to be quantity to string. And when we change it, we're going to be set quantity to big int. Okay, so now if we come back, our user, when they're ready to buy, they can see the price per unit. Oh, actually, let me come to 1258 up again. You can see the price per unit and how much they want to buy for. And now, finally, we need to put this all together. And we need to be able to add in our method call component here. So we're going to come back and create a method call. And this time, however, our method function, instead of being create, we're going to do our by function. And let's do import by. And here we're going to pass in Algorand, DM client, our sender, which will be our active address, our app address, which we can get by algostk.get application address from our ID. Looks like we need to import algo SDK, so let me do that. Okay, so pass in our app address, then we pass in the quantity that we want to buy, the unitary price, and then our set. Oh, actually, we haven't done that yet. Okay, and the last thing we need to do is our units left. So I'm going to come up here, say const units left, set units left, will be uState big int 0n. And we come back down here and we pass in set units left. Get application address. Yep. Okay. And then for our text, say what we're actually going to do is we're going to make this a string, and we're going to say by quantity for do unitary price times big int quantity divided by big int 10e6 algo. Algo. Okay, so we take our unitary price, we multiply it by our quantity, and then we divide it by 10 to the 6 to convert our microalgo to algo. Now, if all goes according to plan, was it 1258? No, 1258. I set my desired quantity to 1. I can now buy 1 unit for 2 algo. If I set it for 100, it'll know that in order to buy 1,000, I need to pay 2,000. And we can see if I go ahead, I can create a new app where the unitary price is 10. And I say that 10, it knows 10 for 100 algo. Okay, so we're making some pretty good progress here. So we've integrated our buy function. And now really that's all that's left is to kind of pretty up the end user experience and then integrate our delete function. So what we want to do is right now, if I'm an end user and I come to this page, I have no way of knowing how much is left for me to buy. I could try to buy this many, and the front end, as far as the front end concerned, it would have no problem allowing me to do that because it has no way of telling me how much is left. So this is where that set units left function is going to come in handy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back up to my use effect function here, and I'm going to add a call Algorand dot. Actually, let me do this outside of here. That'll probably make. Yeah, Algorand dot account get asset information, And here we're going to do August decay dot application address for our app ID. And then we're going to get the asset ID. Then it's going to be info. We are going to pass in set units left info.balance. So what we're basically doing here is each time our app ID changes, we're going to read our global state to see what the asset is and what the unitary price is. But we're also going to check the balance of our app address and see how much asset it has. And so what I'm going to do here is I am going to create another set of fields. For this time, I'm just going to check. Actually, this should be below here. Oh, what is going on? Okay, this time I'm just going to check if there's an app ID. And then what I want to do is render information. So render information about the listing. So I'm going to return here a div, and I'm going to have label didn't end my div correctly. Let me copy my label stuff. This is going to be the asset ID. And let me get my read. Where's my read only? I'm going to copy this. Where's asset ID? Here for our value, we're going to say asset ID to string. That's going to be read only. And then we're going to do the same thing for our unitary price. So we're going to copy that, get myself a little more screen real estate here. Or excuse me, not unitary price, units left. It's going to be units left to string. Oh, and then one thing I want to do is, where's the divider? I'm going to add a divider here. Okay, so on my app, I can now see my asset ID, how much is left, and as a user, I can now know if I try to buy 5, no, that didn't work. I think I know exactly why that didn't work. In my buy function, where is it? I need to set the extra fees here. So extra fee, this is going to be algokit.algos 0.001 for the inner transaction. So let me go ahead and try that again. And now I can see, so I bought 5 for 50 algo, and I can now see that there are 5 units left. So if I bought one more, there'd be 4 units left. If I bought 4, there'd be no units left. Okay, so and now what I want to happen is I want to add special logic for what to do when there are no units left. So let me first come down to here. And I'm going to update this to say if units left is greater than 0. And so now that stuff will disappear. What I basically want to do is I want to say if app ID is not 0 and units left is less than or equal to 0. It should never be less than, but you never know. Might as well just be safe. And units left is equal to 0. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say return a button that is sold out. So, and here I have a button and we're going to say sold out. And our class name is going to be button disabled m-2. And we're going to say this is disabled. Okay, so now if we go back to our front end, we can see here we have this sold out button. Now, the last thing we need to do is we want to, if the end user that is connected to this, if they're the creator, if they're the person that created the marketplace, they're the seller, we want to give them the option to close it. So we're going to create, for now, let's just copy this same condition. And we'll say this will be a method call. And the method function is going to be deleteApp. And the text is going to be deleteApp. Oh, and I need to pass in set ID. What else am I missing? Oh, and of course, the client. And also my Algorand client. Okay. So now, if I, oh, this is probably the same issue that I had before with the fees. I need to come here and I need to, here again, we set the fees a little bit differently in our app client. This is going to be improved in the future, so we have the same extra fee field. But for now, we're going to say send params, and our fee, it's going to be algokit.algos. Oh, I don't know why I put that in object. Fee is going to be algokit.algos 0.003. So one for the outer, one for the asset close, one for the algo transfer. Now, if we go ahead and try to run that again, we can see that we've deleted our app and our app ID was reset to 0. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to, so let's actually go, I guess I have to create a new app. Okay, so our unitary price will be 2. I create it. And let me get sold out here. Oh, I forgot. This needs to be 8. Okay, so now that we have 0 units left, we're seeing both sold out and deleteApp. What I want to happen is have conditional logic depending on who's connected. And this is a very common pattern for front ends. So basically what I need to do is I first need to implement a way to determine who the seller actually is. seller actually is. So who the creator of the app is. And to do that, we're going to go up to our use effect. And we're going to, here after we did all the stuff for our state, we're going to use our algorand client.algod. And we are going to get application by ID. And we're going to pass in our app ID. We're going to .do, and then we're going to call it .then. And we're going to get the response. And in our response, we're going to set seller to response.rams.creator. Okay, and we need to create the set seller, so const seller set seller equals use state string. Okay, this will be a string or undefined. Okay, and so now what we're doing is whenever the app ID changes, we're going to see who the creator of the app was. And so now in our logic here, if our active address, so the address we connected, is not equal to the seller, then we'll show sold out. However, if our active address is equal to the seller, then we'll show the delete application. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, create our app. I'm going to go ahead and buy 10. And because I'm currently connected as the seller, I'm seeing delete app. If I were to disconnect, I would see sold out. Connect back, I can see delete app, and then I can delete the application. Okay. So I think at this point, we have covered everything. The one thing I don't know is where this extra 0 is coming from. So let me see if I can quickly figure out where that's coming from. So that's after our unitary price. Unitary price. Oh, this is. I think that's where it's coming from. Yeah, okay. So at this point, we've kind of gone through how we can do interface that changes dynamically depending on the state of our application and depending on who is connected. So to kind of walk you through the whole flow again, I come here, the app ID is 0. I can go ahead and create a new marketplace or define the unitary price. Right now we're hard coding it at 10 units. And as a user, I can come in here, I can buy 1 unit, I could buy multiple units. And if we're sold out, as the creator or the seller, I have the option to delete the app. And if I'm just a regular end user that wasn't the creator, I'll just see the sold out. Now, of course, like I said, there are multiple different ways you can go from here. The point of this video wasn't to show you how to make the prettiest front end, because obviously I'm not the best person to do that. But the point of this video was to show you how we can integrate Algorand into a front end framework like React and use things like current chain state and application state and connected addresses to dynamically render components that interact with the smart contract that we've created. And this is all happening on the backbone of our generated client. So at this time, what I recommend you to do is you can play around a little bit more and add more features to this. The first thing you might want to add is in the looks like I forgot to connect my wallet. That would be why. Is in the createApp, you want to specify a thing for quantity. Or maybe you want to even go a step further and mint your own assets. In the beginner course, we aren't going to be going too deep into assets, but in the intermediate course, we'll be going more in depth into assets and how we can mint them and how we can follow NFT standards so they can show all pretty in your wallet. But for the beginner, this concludes the content that we're going over in this video series. So if you enjoyed this video series, definitely stay tuned for our intermediate bootcamp. If you're following along in the live bootcamp, the intermediate will be shortly after. If you're watching on YouTube, just check our YouTube channel to see if we posted the intermediate content yet already. If not, then it should be posted shortly. I hope you all have enjoyed this series. And as always, if you have any questions about any of the content that we covered or how you can go forward and expand on this content for yourself, please join our Discord, discord.gg/Algorand, and you can find myself and all my colleagues there that are happy to answer questions. Like I said, hopefully you found this useful, and I will see you in the next intermediate series if you are brave enough to continue on. Bye, everyone.
Oh my goodness.
All right. We have done it. We've built a full stack app on Algorand.
That is super powerful, and I'm speechless because there are too many things that we need to process, to understand, to keep learning around Algorand, and the most important part are the key concepts. For that reason, I invite you guys to take a look at the videos that we have in our YouTube channel, because in that way you will understand the way that ABN works. That is important part, and all the native features that Algorand offers that is super different from the rest of the ecosystem, but in that way you can create powerful solutions and projects like the one that you just showed us. So I want to thank you, Joe, and all the DevRel team who prepared the content of this bootcamp. It's very useful resource for those who want to create a project in Algorand, and all of us feel in the same way that there are too many things to understand, to process. But for me, for example, I remember the project that I want to build, and I keep watching the videos and try to understand it step by step. And I have been playing around, creating my own Python contract, and then I realized that in your example, there are a way to do things, and I say, okay, I can use it in my own smart contract. Let's try to do it using AlgoKit utils. And yesterday with Sarah, we're preparing a session that we're going to have on Saturday, and I use the same logic from your smart contract, but just using the SDK. So there are too many things that you can replicate in the same way with the smart contract and with the SDK, and that is super powerful. So it's the time to claim the certificate, but before that, if something is not clear for you, please send us your question on Discord. I invite you all that you can help us to answer questions because we need to keep working around this. And the moment that we're waiting for, you can use this link that I just shared on the chat to claim your certificate. Or if you are watching this video on YouTube later, you can use this QR code. How is the process to claim the certificate? I prepared these videos so you can see the full process. So first of all, you need to scan this QR code with your camera, because there are people that scan this QR code with Pera Wallet and they will receive an error because this is not a wallet address. So you need to scan the QR code with your camera. Then you will be redirected to the Go Plus website. You need to press the button and proceed to claim. If you don't have algos or if you have any question regarding the process, you can send me an email and I can help you after the session. So hold on a second. This is my email. Yep. So you press the proceed to claim button, and then you need to connect with your Pera wallet. Once there, launch your Pera wallet. You will connect your account, and then you need to go back to the Go Plus website. That happens in iPhone sometimes. In Android, You just press the button and they send you back to the browser. And at the end, you need to sign the transaction and you will receive an NFT, but at the same time, it's a verifiable credential. And that is the beautiful part. So this is the example for the intro bootcamp, but for our Python bootcamp, it's going to look like the same way. But the funny part or the important part is that you can add this certificate to your LinkedIn profile. How you can do it? You need to go to the Go Plausible website. Is this one? One moment. Awesome. Scan the QR code with your Pera wallet, then select the account that you used to claim the certificate in the previous step. And it is the first time that you interact with Go Plausible. You need to opt in to the application. And after that, you will see all the certificates or the NFTs that you have claimed using Go Plausible. So hold on a second. In this case, this is the example for the certificate of the intro bootcamp, and then you must press on verifiable credential. Hold on a second over here. Recheck claims, and after that, you will add to the LinkedIn profile. And here, by default, you will have the name of the certificate issued by the Algorand Foundation, the date of the certificate. And if you want, you can remove the default image that LinkedIn add to the certificate. So over there is the process. You will receive an email maybe on Monday with these videos and the full process. But the idea is once you claim the certificate, you can tag us on our socials. So a lot of people can participate on the upcoming bootcamps. I don't know, Joe, if you have any question, any comment with the content that we learned during this bootcamp. You will have all the tools to participate on the hackathon. So, Joe, over to you. Any additional comment?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, maybe if we still have a little bit of time, I can quickly show people what connecting to testnet or mainnet looks like, because we saw a lot of questions about that throughout the session. So I can show that real quick. We're not going to go too in-depth into this here because, of course, we are bringing the beginner sessions to an end, but we will be covering this more in the intermediate sessions. But I can quickly show what this will look like. So if I come on over to my repository with the full code and I do an npm run dev, you can see that when I connect to my wallet, it just shows localnet. The only thing I have to do in order to change it from localnet to mainnet is in my front end directory. I come to .env. So I open up this .env file. I'm going to comment out all this code. And then I'm going to come down to where it says testnet, for example, if I want to use testnet. I uncomment this code. Oops. And then do an npm run dev. So I didn't change any of the actual code itself, just change that .env file. And now if I come back and I do a wallet connection, I'll be able to connect to all the different options available in Algorand. So I can connect to DeFi, I can connect to Para, and I can connect using my Para wallet and go through the same flow that any end user would go through. So that's all I need to do in order to actually change from connecting to localnet to connecting to mainnet. And that's the beauty of AlgoKit, is that it makes it super easy to switch. Now, there are going to be some slight differences in terms of like how quick it is and funding accounts, and we'll go over kind of the details in the intermediate bootcamp. We just wanted to quickly show you how easy it really is to do that, because I did see a couple of questions on that. And let's see, was there? Let's a couple of questions. So before we wrap up here, so what do you suggest for handling errors? So there's a couple of different ways to handle just general debugging on Algorand. One recommended way is if you're using AlgoKit, and maybe we'll cover this. I hadn't planned on covering this on the intermediate, but this might be something good to cover now that I think about it. So here is a link to the Algorand AVM debugger on the VS Code Marketplace. And this contains information about how to actually use it. And if you're using an AlgoKit template like we've used today, it's pretty easy to kind of plug into your development flow. So you can install that and start debugging with that. Again, we might cover that more in the intermediate session as well. But in addition to using the visual debugger, one really useful tool on Algorand is called Simulate. And so this you can use to simulate transactions to see what they might do, and have a couple different options to mutate what exactly it's going to do. But again, we'll probably cover those more on the intermediate side of things rather than going here in bootcamp.
I will add the session 3 to the drive today afternoon. I forgot to do it yesterday. Wonderful. It's always a pleasure learning from you, Joe. I really appreciate it. And there are too many things for us to keep practicing, to keep trying. That is the most important part of the learning process, because we can see the videos and try to replicate the smart contract. But once you start doing your own contract, in that way you realize if you understand everything or there are things that you need to ask. So for that reason, we invite you guys to keep participating in the upcoming sessions. If you like TypeScript, you can join us the next week, because that is going to be the end of the beginner bootcamp series. And in mid-May, we will have the intermediate ones.
But I have seen a question about the builders channel on Discord. So we give the builders role to people that are building on Algorand and active in the Discord. So if you're active in the Discord and want access to the builders channel, feel free to just DM me on Discord and I can get you out of there.
All right. So thanks everyone for joining us during this bootcamp. We learned a lot. And right now it's time to register for the hackathon, build your own solution, and try to be one of the winners of one of the tracks. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next week session on the intermediate ones. Is there anything else, Joe, that you want to share with the algo devs today?
No, I think that about covers it. Thanks everyone for joining, and best of luck in the hackathon if you're participating.
Thanks everyone, and see you the next week or on the intermediate session on mid-May. Bye.